talk about a theory that is nearly 70 years old. Yeah, you might call it outdated, but very much relevant in the second decade of the 21st century. That's now, and almost compulsory reading and following expected from the modern day leaders. And that theory is Herzburg theory. This was a pioneer, groundbreaking theory coming from the late 1950s, actually 1959, where, you know, as a theory for the first time, um, you know, there was a realization that motivation plays a key role in getting the best out of the workforce. Now, in modern era of the 21st century, you might think, how come? Well, in the early days, where labor or the human resources abundant, plentiful, there was huge unemployment. So obtaining workforce for a lesser pay and get them maximum work was the standard procedure, standard operating procedure. So, for a philosopher of, a business theorist to come up with the concept of motivation was a groundbreaking thing. It was actually a game changer, which made the leaders or the managers look at the workforce in a rather different way. It's not just the salary, not just the working conditions, not just the basic facilities that are required to get the best out of the workforce. The motivator factors: achievement, recognition, responsibility, work, enjoying the work itself, and provisioning of chance of advancement and the personal growth, the motivator factors. Herzberg said that it's a motivator factors that drives the person to better performance, and he considered the rest, the typical facilities provided or the basics provided at the workplace, as the hygiene factors, could lead to job dissatisfaction. So Herzberg opined that yes, the job dissatisfaction causing factors must be minimized, but there has to be an increase in the motivator factors, right, to get the best out of the workforce. So we call it the two-factor theory, and one that made a huge impact on the modern working environment. The motivator factors, yeah, it increases the love of the job or the job satisfaction of the employee, whereas the hygiene factors, the typical basic facilities, the typical things provided by the workforce, is technically, the more or less of it may result in affecting the job satisfaction. It will not increase the job satisfaction. What increases the job satisfaction is the motivator factors. So that's the Herzberg theory in a nutshell. Yeah, what are these motivator factors? These are factors inherent to work, essential. It's that what determines the optimum working, the quality, optimum achievement of the potential of the workforce. The motivator factors, motivational factors. Yes, it supports excellent or the superior performance, and yes, it's technically psychological needs which are more in the motivator factor, not the physiological aspect. And yes, the employees would consider them to be rewarding. Before that, we had Maslow in the 1940s. He was talking about self-actualization. So there was a little bit of that, but that level is reached by the employee at the very end of it, end of his maybe a couple of years of work. But Herzberg didn't talk about a time frame. He said, whatever the level of the employee, whether he's a fresh employee with couple of days experience or one with years, motivator factors play a big role. So that was his idea about it. And what are these motivator factors? Recognition. Yeah. praise, that the quality of the work is recognized, and employees also feel that they are owning it. They are also part of the ownership, sense of challenge. Yes, provisioning of the promotional opportunity. This is nothing much, it's nothing about the salaries, right? It's nothing about the facilities. It's about respect and regard and recognition of the quality of the work or the quality of his effort. So yes, of course the hygiene factors might contribute, but you know, it's these motivator factors that take the employee into the next level satisfaction in his workplace. So Herzburg was almost the first to come up with it, idea wise. Sense of challenge. And then the hygiene factor. What are the hygiene factors? Is, you know, essential for motivation. Yeah, you have to have motivation at the end, but for the motivation to come up, hygiene plays a role. But absence of these hygiene factors may lead to dissatisfaction. We'll be learning that later. What are these? We call them the physiological needs. Take a look. Pay, fringe benefits, working conditions, job security, supervision, relationships. You know, that means the relationship between the peers, workforce, the manager, the employees, company policies. These are the typical stuff that a company may be bothered too much about. For Herzberg, they were physiological factors, or in other ways, the hygiene factors. That's what he called them, right? The hygiene factors. So Herzberg said that problems in them may lead to dissatisfaction at the work. So, these are more likely to cause dissatisfaction. So, provisioning them may not motivate the employee. Provisioning them enough will reduce the dissatisfaction. To create the motivation, well, you have to go for some things like the love and belonging. I maybe esteem a little bit. But, these physiological factors, safety, security, right, the basic needs, these are, in his words, the hygiene factors. Essential, but not what that drives the workforce to optimum performance. They are the motivator factors. So what a manager should be doing? Yes, definitely the hygiene factor should be provided, like the salary, working conditions, safety, security, all that. But added to that, he has to make sure that the work is more stimulating and rewarding. By providing, by supporting, creating environment for the motivation of the workforce. So the motivation of the workforce lies beyond the hygiene factors. Staying at the hygiene factors only would not lead to motivating the workforce. That was the mantra, right? The sutra told by Herzberg. Just providing the hygiene factors. No matter, it leads to, the satisfaction of it, that would not motivate the employees. Motivation is coming in a different angle. Love, belonging, the sense of, the achievement, recognition, right? Feeling of, that you belong, that sort of thing. So what should the managers be doing? Yeah. Focus should be on the job enrichment, not just job satisfaction, just the basic salary and all that. So there are the advantages, and the manager should be giving them. And yes, there's more focus on the employee skills and competencies. So to make the employee make his own decisions, give them more responsibility, give them a sense of achievement, you have to have the optimum skills and the competencies of the employee. So you have to provide it, you have to support it. And yes, manager, the leader, management has to focus on provisioning of these motivational factors right throughout the work to get the best kick out of the workforce. Yes, hygiene factors play a role, important role, but the real game changer, real determiner of optimum performance at a company is motivation. That has been Herzberg's theory. Of course, Herzberg has minus factors. Take a look at it. Well, the aspects of motivation is related to situations, right? Maybe the environment, maybe your own inner feelings. So it might not be that easy to motivate an entire workforce. There will be ups and downs. So the Herzberg theory doesn't look at the differences in the people's level of motivation. Herzberg believes that the workforce would be generally responding. That may not be true also, right? Due to various reasons, the situational variables, we call them, the people's behavior differs, nothing to do with the company, due to outer factors. Yeah, that is a disadvantage, because Herzberg theory doesn't look into that aspect. By thinking that everyone can be motivated is a rather too lofty a dream or a plan. And yes, in Herzberg theory, we don't focus on productivity. Herzberg doesn't bother about it. What he says is, they motivate the employees, and that would lead to productivity. So the productivity of the employee is not taken as a motivator factor by him. What he says is, get the motivator factors on, and the productivity will happen later. So that may be a disadvantage. And yes, there's a load of work on the manager, right, to read the mind of the employees. What motivates them? It's not an easy thing to find out, at a workplace. And the manager is expected to identify who would be motivated by what, how would the motivated be, how the motivated quality could be created. So the manager has to read it. Of course, he could misread it, right? Where motivation has to be backed up by hygiene factors, or where the hygiene has to be supported by the motivation factors. And if the manager misreads it, that may result in issues. And yes, the dissatisfaction that the Herzberg basically says, dissatisfaction causes due to internal factors. That means salary, work conditions, the company policies and all. But dissatisfaction could be due to external factors as well. The difficulty in traveling, right? Family issues. Herzberg doesn't bother about it. Behavior factors. And yes, the blue collar staff is basically there for salary, right? And the basic benefits. I wonder if motivation factors work there. And Herzberg doesn't pay attention to the blue collar staff anyway. So these are the disadvantages of it. But anyway, let's see how the applications are. Okay, imagine motivation goes higher, right? If the motivation increases and the hygiene factors are low, that will result in, employees are motivated to work, but they have complaints. Hygiene factors are low, so that means motivation is there, but to a certain degree, certain basic needs are not provided. So that may result in complaints. Let's take something like a teacher. Teacher may be highly motivated to be a teacher, right, or university lecturer, but the salary and other things might dissatisfy him more. So he may be there, right? What about here? High motivation, high hygiene factors, ideal situation. Employees have no complaints and are motivated well. Not easy to create that kind of an environment. So the level of motivation, right, creates differences in reaction. Take a look at here. Low motivation, low hygiene. Sometimes it could be this, right? Worst situation, employees are not motivated and have complaints. So the company has not provided enough hygiene and there's lesser motivation. Could result in huge problems, a lot of turnover. How about hygiene factors are high, but the motivation factors are very much less. In a modern industry setting, like company gives you all the facilities, but the company tells you that you can be replaced. So when you feel that there's always a threat on your job that you may be replaced, they're treating me nice with the salary and the basic facilities, but my job security is rather weak. I don't feel belong here. I may be removed. That may result in limited motivation. So ideal place is higher hygiene factors and higher motivation factors. I cannot give you examples on this. The different industries have tried it in different ways, especially the apparel industry, where It's very difficult to attract the workforce to work in that heavy duty apparel industry. Apparel companies have gone way beyond the rest of the industries, right, in motivating the employees by giving them so much of value added work, like taking care of the kids, supporting the children education, healthcare, making them feel belong, so much of fun and entertainment added up, so much of things. So that could be high hygiene and high motivation. But still, I don't think it has led to the optimum results, because still in the apparel sector you see lots of people leaving the industry. You do see, right? As always the case. Especially, you are driven to work there in the 30s, but when you turn the late 30s, you feel like, right, I need to go for a different kind of environment. Banks may have hygiene factors may be high, but the motivation may be somewhat less in the banking industry. I'm just making up a mind, right? Tourism, motivation may be there, but the hygiene factors is a problem in tourism industry. If you take a look at the government, public sector, hygiene factors are insufficient, and so is the motivation. So that's why we need a huge workforce of over 1 million, right, to run the government services. How about the services like the police? Hygiene factors not much, motivation is very much less. So that lead to things like the corruption and the poor quality of work and all that. So it's not easy, right? Especially in the media. Media work hard to create the motivation and provide sufficient hygiene, because the quality of the service would be determined by the quality of the motivation. So especially in the industries where personal service is required, there the companies would work hard to provide the motivation and provide decent hygiene. Otherwise the service quality will fall. In factories, of course, when you buy the finished product, we don't see the the pain suffered by the factory worker. But in the service industry, like banking, insurance, finance, right, hoteling, the service is visible highly, and the service giver is also visible to us. So the happiness of the service giver, service provider, right, the employee, his level of motivation is pretty much looks at us, right? So what do those industries do? They provide service charges, provide a lot of holidays, provide plenty free time to create the motivation from them, and try their level best to provide hygiene as well. So that's technically what Herzburg is all about. And yes, it's a pretty good tool, but it's better to use Herzburg with some other principles. Because of its inability, the Herzberg doesn't consider the micro aspects, right, as well as the macro aspects. Some of the micro and macro aspects are not considered. So Herzberg is a wonderful tool to identify the importance of motivation, but it's not just that. That would be